If you have been around weights for any period of time, you're likely very familiar with glute bridges. Bridges are a fantastic exercise for hip health and strengthening when done correctly. To activate and engage the glutes effectively, we want a neutral pelvis, and we will approach glute bridges in this video more with core and pelvic floor rehab in mind versus heavier weightlifting. Elevating your feet for bridges helps with more posterior chain recruitment, particularly your proximal hamstrings. Your elevated surface can be anything from a bench or step to 2 yoga blocks or stacks of books if you're at home. Lie down on the ground with your feet on the elevated surface and pointed straight ahead, pelvis width apart. Think of this as a hip hinge motion using the contraction of your glutes plus a little hamstring involvement to lift your hips off the ground. Take a nice 360 inhale and exhale, engage your low abs, and then keep some tension in your low abs throughout your bridges. Contract the glutes on the way up and then relax and let your hips naturally hinge to come back down, lengthening through the glutes while maintaining a neutral spine. If you tend toward an anterior pelvic tilt, the proximal hamstring involvement can help tuck your pelvis under to find a more neutral position. I go over proximal hamstring activation in much more depth in my video on hamstring bridges, but in short, you can turn on your proximal hamstrings by really pressing your feet into the ground and even imagining pulling your heels back toward your body. You can also think of pulling your sit bones up to the backs of your knees. In order to assess whether you're in a neutral pelvis, check that your ribs stay stacked and in line with the top of your pelvis through the whole range of motion, and that your torso moves as one long line. If you tend toward a posterior pelvic tilt and you clench or tuck your glutes under a lot in day-to-day life, strengthening the proximal hamstrings can help you decrease the clenching over time and reestablish that more neutral pelvis. Take note that you're not tucking your pelvis excessively and rolling up through your spine. If you're rolling up off your back, this is working more of your spine than it is a hinge motion through the glutes. We also want to stay out of that anterior tilt where your back is excessively arched because the movement will be coming from your back, if so, rather than from your glutes and your proximal hamstrings. Lastly, we can add a little adduction or abduction to our glute bridges. Placing a band just above your knees can help with overall glute engagement. We are not pressing excessively out into the band, but just enough to keep your thighs parallel and to activate your glute medius plus your glute max as you contract up. This is AB or abduction. Alternatively, if you want to work more on adduction or adduction, rather than placing a band around your legs, you may try placing a yoga block or a ball between your knees. Bringing adduction into your bridges helps decrease deep hip rotator activity and further connect with your pelvic floor. As you do a series of bridges, you can rest your arms down on the floor by your sides, or you can raise them straight up in the air, thinking of creating space between your shoulder blades. If you choose to raise your hands straight up in the air, you can progress by holding a weight in your hands while you do a series of bridges. Adding a weight really gets your serratus on board, which can help with maintaining ab tension and stabilizing your core. Once you have mastered these elevated glute bridges, or if your focus is simply more on your hamstrings, you can check out my other video dedicated to hamstring bridges.